For 4 years, our Yorkshire Farm was must-watch television in Britain. Over 3 million people tuned in every single week to watch Amanda and Clive Owen raise 9 children on one of the most remote farms in England, a 2,000-acre hill farm buried deep in the Yorkshire Dales, where the nearest town was an hour away and the weather could turn savage overnight. No scripted drama, no manufactured conflict, just a real family doing something genuinely extraordinary and making it look almost effortless. Then in June 2022, everything stopped. No proper farewell episode, no final season. Amanda posted a joint statement to Instagram. Channel 5 went quiet, and just like that, one of the most watched factual programs in the country was gone. Fans were blindsided. The comment sections exploded, and the questions started pouring in from every direction. What actually happened? Was it the split? Was there an affair? Did fame destroy something that never should have been put on camera? In the first place, the truth, as it turns out, is messier and more human than any of the headlines suggested. Because what ended our Yorkshire Farm wasn't just a marriage breaking down. It was the slow, grinding pressure of overnight fame landing on 2 very different people in very different ways. One of them thrived. The other quietly fell apart. And by the time anyone outside Ravensseat knew how bad things had gotten, the damage was already done. What followed was a story of public blame, contested rumors, a contested affair that wasn't quite what it seemed, and an unconventional co-parenting arrangement that somehow, against all odds, has kept this family not just together, but back on our screens and more watchable than ever. This is the real story of what happened to our Yorkshire Farm. Amanda Owen didn't grow up on a farm. She grew up in Huddersfield, a regular suburban upbringing, semi-detached house, busy road out front. Nothing remotely rural about it. As a teenager, she wanted to be a vet, inspired by James Herriot's books. When she told her careers advisor, he looked her dead in the eye and told her she wasn't academic enough. Go away and think again. So she did. And what she came back with was something nobody expected. She'd become a shepherdess instead. She spent her late teens and early 20s working contract shepherding jobs across the country, moving farm to farm, building a skill set that most people her age couldn't have imagined. Then, on a cold autumn night in 1996, her boss sent her to collect a ram from a remote hill farm in Swaledale. The farm was called Ravensseat. The farmer living there alone was Clive Owen, a man more than 2 decades her senior. Amanda turned up, collected the ram, and something clicked. She kept coming back. Eventually, she didn't leave. They married in 2000, and what followed was, by any measure, an extraordinary life. Ravensseat sits at over 2,000 feet above sea level, buried at the top of Swaledale in the Yorkshire Dales. The nearest large town is nearly 50 miles away. The nearest major hospital, 4 hours round trip. They had no mortgage, no debt, and no safety net. What they did have was 2,000 acres, roughly 1,000 sheep, a growing herd of cattle, and over the years, 9 children: Raven, Reuben, Miles, Edith, Violet, Sydney, Annis, Clementine, and Nancy. The family first appeared on television in 2011 as part of an ITV documentary series called The Dales, and again in 2015 on Ben Fogle's New Lives in the Wild on Channel 5. That episode caught the attention of producers at Renegade Pictures, and what came next changed everything. Our Yorkshire Farm launched on Channel 5 on November 27, 2018. And within 2 series, it was topping the primetime ratings, beating BBC One in its own slot. By Series 3, the show was averaging 3.2 million consolidated viewers per episode. The season finale hit 3.7 million. For Channel 5, it was the highest-rated factual program of 2020. What made it work wasn't drama or conflict. It was the complete opposite. Warmth, authenticity, and a family that seemed genuinely unaffected by the cameras watching them. Britain couldn't get enough, but fame has a way of rewarding some people and quietly destroying others. While millions of viewers were falling in love with the Owens, something very different was happening behind the scenes at Ravensseat. The show that made Amanda a household name was quietly doing real damage to her marriage, and Clive has since been remarkably honest about why. Before the cameras arrived, the dynamic at Ravensseat was straightforward. Clive was the farmer. Amanda had come to his land, built a life alongside him, and together they ran everything. He was older, more experienced, and by traditional measures, the backbone of the operation. Then our Yorkshire Farm launched, and almost overnight, that balance shifted completely. Amanda was the one people wanted. She was the one the producers followed. She was the one being invited to speak at events, appearing in magazines, signing book deals. And Clive was still on the farm, watching it happen from a distance and struggling badly with what that meant for him. He has since admitted it openly, in his own words, with no attempt to soften the picture. He told interviewers he resented Amanda's success, that it was especially hard knowing she was getting paid more to talk about farming than he'd ever earned from actually doing it. He said he wanted to keep her on the farm and away from all of it. He admitted to jealousy, to drinking heavily, whiskey by his own account, to ranting and raving and behaving in ways that he knew were wrong but couldn't stop. He also acknowledged that depression had played a part, and that as his behavior worsened, it became something Amanda simply couldn't continue to live with. Amanda, for her part, said she tried everything to hold things together. She described driving 5 hours home from an event just to do a supermarket run, trying to prove to Clive that she was still committed on every level, still present, still the same person he'd married. It wasn't enough. And it was during the COVID lockdowns in 2020 when the farm fell quiet. The outside world went away, and it was just the two of them and 9 children in one of the most remote locations in England that the reality of where they'd ended up became impossible to ignore. Amanda has said it plainly. She realized she felt calmer when she and Clive were apart. That clarity, once it arrived, didn't leave. The cracks had been forming for years. The fame just made them impossible to paper over. And once the newspapers got wind of what was happening at Ravenseat, things were about to get very ugly, very fast. On June 9, 2022, Amanda posted a joint statement to her Instagram account. The wording was measured and dignified. They had made the difficult decision to separate. They would continue to co-parent. Their children's well-being was the priority. Fans were devastated. The comment sections flooded with shock and sadness from people who had felt, watching the show, like they genuinely knew this family. But the media wasn't interested in a dignified statement. It wanted answers. And within months, the story got considerably messier. In March 2023, allegations surfaced from an unexpected source, a woman named Yasumi Davies, the wife of businessman Robert Davies. Robert was someone Amanda had known professionally for years. He had built the farm's website and managed their digital presence. Yasumi told the press she had found a handwritten love note in the boot of her husband's car, apparently from Amanda, and that the relationship had been ongoing for years while they were both still married. She gave a series of interviews accusing Amanda of living a double life and lying to the public who had trusted and admired her. The tabloids ran with it hard. Amanda's reputation took a serious hit. Online, the reaction was fierce. People who had spent years watching her as the wholesome Yorkshire shepherdess felt deceived. The timing was brutal. Our Yorkshire Farm had already been quietly wound down. Now the woman who'd been its heart was being dragged through a very public scandal. Amanda's response, when it eventually came, told a very different version of events. She said Robert Davies had been a mutual friend of both her and Clive, that Clive himself had actually suggested Robert as someone she might connect with after the separation, and that Clive knew about the relationship from the very beginning. She was firm that it was never a secret. Clive backed her up, appearing on television and telling interviewers that he'd had a massive part to play in the marriage, ending that he'd behaved badly and that the blame being directed at Amanda wasn't fair or accurate. He told one interviewer that the intensity of the scrutiny she was subjected to had nearly broken her. As for Robert Davies, that relationship also fell apart. Amanda later confirmed they were no longer together or in contact. Asked about her romantic future, she was blunt. It was just her and her horse now, and she was done. What nobody could have predicted was what came next, because the Owens weren't finished with television, not even close. November 2022, 5 months after the separation announcement, and while the affair rumors were already beginning to circulate, Channel 5 made it official. Our Yorkshire Farm would not be returning in its original form. The show that had been their highest-rated factual program of 2020, the show that had beaten BBC One in the primetime slot, the show that millions had made part of their weekly routine, was over. The logic was cold, but unavoidable. Our Yorkshire farm had been built entirely around the idea of a family unit. 2 parents, 9 children, 1 remote farm, all of it held together by the partnership at its center. Without that partnership, the premise simply didn't exist anymore. You couldn't film Amanda and Clive as a couple, raising their family in harmony, when they were no longer a couple. The show had always sold a version of life that was warm, complete, and real. That version of life was gone. What Channel 5 offered instead was a quick pivot, a 3-part spin-off called Beyond the Yorkshire Farm. Reuben and Clive launched on December 6, 2022, barely 2 weeks after the cancellation was confirmed. It followed eldest son Reuben and his father as they launched a small digging business, taking on pond digging contracts and working alongside Reuben's girlfriend Sarah and his best friend Tom. It was a solid watch, and the numbers reflected that. Around 1.8 million viewers tuned in, making it a genuine hit for the channel. Amanda, meanwhile, had gone in the opposite direction entirely. She fronted her own solo series for More 4 called Amanda Owen's Farming Lives, visiting working farms across the UK. But the audience didn't follow in the same numbers. The show pulled around 600,000 viewers. It was a significant step down from the Ravenseat days, and for a woman whose public image was simultaneously being torn apart in the tabloids, the timing couldn't have been much harder. The contrast was stark, and for Amanda's supporters, deeply frustrating. Reuben was thriving on screen while she was taking the full weight of the media storm. Clive even stepped back from the Reuben spinoff after just 3 episodes, telling interviewers his son didn't need him there anymore, leaving Amanda as the only Owen without a clear television home. It looked for a while like our Yorkshire farm had taken everything with it when it went, but someone at Channel 4 had been paying close attention. While the television deals were being quietly arranged behind the scenes, the toll of everything that had happened was becoming impossible to miss. By 2024 and into 2025, fans watching Amanda's social media updates and television appearances began to notice something that worried them. She looked noticeably thinner. The comments flooded in, some people calling her gaunt, others saying something seemed off, others simply expressing concern in the way that audiences do when they've followed someone for years and genuinely care what happens to them. Amanda fired back on Instagram with characteristic bluntness. She was in good health, she was fine, and she didn't need anyone's unsolicited opinions about her body. Several fans backed down, acknowledging their comments had come from concern rather than cruelty. But the conversation didn't go away entirely, because the visual change was real and notable enough that people kept returning to it. The explanation, once you look at everything she'd been carrying since 2022, isn't difficult to piece together. The separation, the tabloid storm, the affair allegations, the boyfriend who the media had pursued relentlessly until the relationship shattered under the pressure, a solo television debut that hadn't landed anywhere near the numbers she'd been used to, 9 children to raise, a 2,000-acre tenanted farm to run, and all of it being done without the partner she'd built the entire operation alongside. She'd also taken on considerably more of the physical labor at Ravenseat herself in the aftermath of the split. And farm work at that altitude, in that climate, is genuinely brutal. Long before anyone worried about her weight, she was already burning through more than most people could sustain. Then came news that hit her fan base hard. Amanda confirmed that the famous Swaledale sheep flock at Ravenseat, the flock that had been at the heart of the original show, the animals that viewers had watched being born, raised, and sheared across 5 series, was facing a significant reduction. The farm that millions had romanticized on their sofas every Tuesday night was changing in ways that couldn't be undone. Farming pressures, personal upheaval, and the sheer weight of doing it all largely alone had forced decisions nobody wanted to make. She put it plainly herself, things had to change at Ravenseat. The reality behind the idyllic television version of the farm had always been harder than it looked. Now, finally, the gap between the two had closed completely. But even in the middle of all of that, something unexpected was being built. The property had actually been sitting in the background of the Owen story for years. Back in 2020, While Our Yorkshire Farm was at the absolute peak of its popularity, Amanda and Clive had purchased a derelict farmhouse at auction, a centuries-old stone building in the Swaledale parish of Mooker, just a mile from Ravenseat, known locally as Auntie John's. The roof had partially caved in. There was no running water. The plan at the time was to renovate it and eventually give the family somewhere permanent to put down roots, since Ravenseat itself is a tenanted property they've never owned. Then the marriage fell apart, the show was canceled, and Auntie John's sat waiting. In September 2024, Channel 4 made the announcement that changed everything. They had commissioned Our Farm Next Door, Amanda, Clive, and Kids, a brand new 10-episode series for More 4, following the entire Owen family as they tackled the Auntie John's renovation together. Amanda, Clive, all 9 children, local, tradespeople, brutal Yorkshire weather, and a Grade 2 listed building with a complicated planning permission situation. The first episode aired on October 14th, 2024. The reaction from longtime fans was complicated. Many were thrilled just to have the Owens back on screen in any form, but some felt the new show didn't quite recapture what had made Our Yorkshire Farm so special. A few viewers called it flat compared to the original, and complained that the farm itself and the younger children felt sidelined. Amanda addressed the criticism directly on Instagram, inviting people to give it time. Those who stuck with it were rewarded. The show found its footing. The renovation drama proved genuinely compelling, including Clive having a serious hip operation mid-series that halted work and left Amanda managing everything alone again. And the audience responded. Series 2 launched in April 2025. By August 2025, Channel 4 announced that 2 further series had been commissioned, with filming already underway. The third series began airing on More 4 from January 19th, 2026, focusing on the interior transformation of Auntie John's, plumbing, design, and making a 200-year-old ruin into an actual home. Amanda herself has also moved her family into the property. After years of living as tenants at Ravenseat with no permanent home of their own, the Owens finally have something that belongs to them. Tile by tile, stone by stone, in one of the most unforgiving locations in England, they built it back up from nothing, which, when you think about it, is exactly what the whole family has been doing since 2022.